Hello, this is Stacey Hurich from Turning for Transformation, and today this is street interview number 7. We've taken to the streets today. We've gone and knocked on the door of Accuity, and with me here I have Clint McKauge.
Hi there.
Clint, thank you so much for allowing me to come into your office today and interview you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Clint McKauge, as you say, and I've been on the planet for over 50 years. We won't say exactly how many. And I've always tried to have a lot of fun. I've got a lovely wife, Lee, and 4 beautiful daughters. And they've all, this has been an exciting week for me because 2 of them have just graduated at university. So one's just graduated as a nurse, and the older one has got quite a few degrees to her name, but the latest one is a master's in architecture. So obviously one of my roles is as a dad and a parent. So I'm a very proud parent at this particular point in time.
Very much so. So congratulations to both of your daughters who graduated as well. Yes.
So family's very important to me, so that's why I started off in that space or whatever. And my wife and I decided very early on, my wife was a child bride, she was less than 20 when we got married, so we decided early on that we wanted 4 children. So we've achieved our plans. That's financial planning for us. So that's, yes, it hasn't been quite as regimented as that, but it's, it was always part of our long-term plan. So I've been very fortunate to play a number of roles throughout my life. So in my younger days, I got a degree myself in computer science and started off doing electrical engineering first, but at the time when I was doing it, I think about 3 people out of the 60 people that were in graduating each year got jobs. So I said, this mightn't be a strategic move. And then this newfangled thing came along called computers, and I thought, well, that sounds quite interesting, so I got involved in that and was very early into that. So when I first started writing programs, they were on punch cards, so that'll give you an idea of how long ago.
Wow, okay.
Punch cards and paper tape and collector teams and
very, very fresh computers that we have now.
Yeah, there were ones before that, but they're the first ones that I was actually involved with as a job. I sort of rose very quickly through the ranks. I was the youngest manager ever appointed at Suncorp or whatever. So I really enjoyed it, and I got a bit of a reputation for being the bridge between business and the IT skills. So I had to have a split personality. When I was talking to business people, I had to have like an IT brain, so we say, and when I was talking to IT people, I'd explain the business side of things to them. So I was the bridge between the 2 sections. So I learned early on about communication and at a very practical. If you've got to explain yourself to programmers, you've got to be very good at communicating.
Very much so.
If you've got to explain IT to business people, you've got to be very good at communicating as well. So that's the early part of my actual communication activities within those realms. So so I've always been able to do things that were slightly different and have a lot of fun in doing so.
Okay, so you first of all started off with IT and computer programming and things like that, and you've now moved into financial planning.
Yeah, well, the strange thing is a lot of my IT business was for financial institutions, so Suncorp in this case, and what they a lot of the work that I did was as a computer programmer or whatever, you're normally doing things where significant change is involved. So In the case of the financial side, it was when the superannuation industry changed significantly in 1983, and that's where I was heavily involved with Suncorp in those sort of changes. So you get to know these things at a very intimate level because you've actually got to write code to reflect laws and things like that. So you've actually got to know it probably as well as anybody else. So it's quite an interesting phenomenon. Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So you've been a very devoted husband for a while, and you've been a very proud dad with 4 beautiful daughters.
Yes, indeed.
Because I'm sure that they're all doing their own thing.
They are. Yes. Normal lives, doing normal things.
Yes.
Sometimes not so normal things. So.
Okay, so you're a husband and you're a dad and parent. Right? Is there a difference between being a dad and parent or being
I suppose they're similar, yeah. Normally we only get to, one's synonymous with the other. But,
pretty much.
Yeah.
Go hand in hand. And you...
I guess the parent bit has got a connotation of doing it together with your partner. So, whereas the dad bit is, it's got a different feeling as being a dad as opposed to a parent. The dad's got another role as well, haven't you? So, another relationship between, particularly if it's a different set together, so there's another dynamic there happening as well.
And you've had different roles in your life as well. So you've done computer programming and you've done financial planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of different things in computing. So I was a programmer and then a systems analyst, as they called it, and then a project leader. So
very different roles.
And then a project manager and then a manager, and I was an executive officer as well. So in the executive of the business and whatever. So as the main IT person.
So in all these different facets of your life, is communication important?
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it without some sort of communication, yes. And it's, when you're a leader as well, there's another set of skills you need as a leader to communicate effectively as well. So it's...
Because that's what you were saying earlier when you were first introducing yourself as well, is that being able to speak to different programmers requires being able to communicate as well as being able to speak to all the different business people. Yeah.
I guess a lot of it involves working out where they're coming from, that particular group. So a business person obviously is coming from a certain area and has certain requirements based on them, so you understand where they're coming from and then you see how you can assist them. So, and you use my intuition a lot as well. So, which is probably something people don't normally talk about in communication. It's very hard. It's a different topic for it.
Okay, well, we might even be able to explore the intuition side of communication a little bit later on in the interview as well, because that's a whole different area of communication.
Yeah.
In all these different areas, you said communication is important. What makes communication important?
On my own personal side, I'm a bit of a strange person because I'm very much an ideas person, so I get a lot of ideas or whatever, as you know personally. But what's different about me is I'm also a completer finisher. So a completer finisher means you finish what you start, or you decide what you're going to complete and you make sure what you do. So to actually complete things, you need to communicate with others to help you, because no job is just you working on your own, whatever. So it involves different people with different skill sets, different ways. They'll have different ways of looking at life and whatever, and to motivate them and to get them to do what needs to be done. requires a different skill set. That's all exciting, and the interesting part of it's training as well. So you need to develop those people so that they can operate. I'm going to say it sounds funny to say it without me being involved, but that's what actually happened. That the teams become so effective that they can operate quite readily without my sort of leadership. And I actually made myself redundant at some point because I trained up all the people to do my job, and then at that stage I was redundant. I wasn't needed anymore. So that was good because if I was headhunted by somebody else, I wouldn't work for them. But it's sort of like the cycle of life, isn't it? That, you start off and you start doing something, and then you make sure that the next set of people are there that can carry on the job.
Okay, so when you said to me all these different roles require different skills, like a leadership role requires different skills to doing the computer programming and things like that, does it also require different communication skills as well, or are they the same?
No, they're pretty much different.
Oh, okay.
But, communication obviously has some core bits associated with it. But I found over the years that just stepping back a sec, that I've also built a lot of successful teams. So even throughout the life of a team, there'll be different communication processes going on. So obviously, when you're starting up, it's all breaking the ice and getting people to work together and exchange a bit about themselves and those sort of things. And as it moves on, then there's more those people, as I said, using their own intuition and things and working independently on their own. But you've got to have created the environment that makes that possible.
And the way you communicate to these people in the beginning is going to either make or break the project, isn't it?
Well, you can say that, yeah, but it's my philosophy of life is nothing's ever broken. You can always find a way to fix it. But if you're trying to do things in the most efficient and effective way, yes, you need to plan that out ahead. So it was interesting when I was at Suncorp, the CEO used to whisper in my ear that he wanted some special project done, and I'd put together that, the brief of that project and cost it all out and get it approved by the board or the relevant committee that was responsible for making that expenditure. And then I'd start getting people on board, so I'd be choosing the relevant people for the task, and then getting it all happening. And then by the time the team was all efficient and working properly, the next one would be on the drawing board, so I'd walk away from that one and go to the next one. So, but that actually makes it very exciting and dynamic sort of activity. And the other thing is later on I became a business consultant or an IT consultant and had my own IT consultancy business and working for lots of different people. So in that environment you need to be able to get in very quickly, work out what needs to be done or get the brief defined properly and start things happening quickly. So you need different communication skills to make things happen quickly than what you need if you're just building something up more slowly over time.
So when you were talking earlier, Clint, you said that there are some core communication skills. What are they?
A lot of what I do in communication is learning about the person I'm communicating with. So it's like two minds communicating, and you have to have an understanding of what those people, where they're coming from and what they're trying to achieve and those sort of things. So active listening skills and things like that are important. Building an environment where people want to be engaged and doing things is important. So that's the sort of social side comes into that a little bit, or camaraderie or whatever. So creating an environment where people feel like they can communicate freely and openly. So that's important. And then having ways to communicate in the IT land is always interesting because you're part of the communication is through diagrams, you might have heard of flow diagrams and things like that. But it's a really great way to take the essence of something and distill it down into things that, if you're talking to somebody else, then you can use that mechanism to communicate more effectively. So I guess it's saying that you're not starting from scratch. You're assuming that people know something about what that diagram means and using that to further the communication channel. So, a lot of, when you're in the leadership role, a lot of it's about standing up in group situations and making deliveries or presentations, or in management situations, giving presentations to boards and things like that. So they're another whole different set of communication skills, which involves sort of crystallizing your communication message and saying relevant things to sort of actively turn that on in people's minds or whatever. So if you're talking to senior executives or whatever, you've got to be very brief or very economical in how you present yourself, because their time is very precious. But you need them to actually say, yes, I want to do what, after they're recommending something, so you want them to take up the recommendation, so it's got to have some whole phrases, content in it as well.
So over your whole course of life, you've used varying different communication skills and techniques in all your different jobs and roles.
That's right, yeah. So I guess the main process is to think clearly about what you're actually doing and seeing how you can be economical with what you're presenting. So, although when we're interacting socially, we might be a bit waffly or whatever. That's fine or whatever. But in other contexts, you need to be very crystal clear. So if people are spending real dollars or having to make real decisions, you've got to cut to the chase and make it clear about what's being said. It quite often involves, communication can involve verbal communication, visual with the PowerPoints and that sort of thing, or now we've got the web and it offers another dimension of communication, doesn't it? And it often requires written communication as well, so sort of pride yourself on being able to write very good reports that, with appropriate executive summary and things like that. So that for those that just want a little snapshot, there's a snapshot, here's the bottom line. For those that want to delve down, saying, well, in this business context, I think it might need to be tweaked a little bit this way, a little bit that way. Well, then you provide a bit more detail so they can see why you're presenting it that way and going from there. Yeah, so communication is a lot about fun as well, isn't it? And, having fun at what you're doing, and a lot of people may get a bit stressed in their communication, so you find they stressed out. And that applies in the way you do it yourself. It also applies in the other person's needs. It's interesting when you're working as a management hierarchy, the bosses that were mentoring me or whatever would say you've got to think about the needs of, what the person above you is wanting to get out of the relationship or whatever, and, be aware of that and manage upwards as it's said or whatever. So as a manager, you're managing upwards to the people above you and downwards to the people below, and you need all of that to work properly to get a result. So it's a bit of a challenge. But I was up to it, as you can see.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, all right. So you had all these different communication skills in all the different roles that you had: management roles, leadership roles, technician roles, computer programming roles, and now financial planning as well. Is the communication you use at work in all these roles, is it the same as if you were at home with your partner or with your children?
No, not really.
No?
The strange thing is I find the communication at home more difficult or whatever. So, and I think it's because people are coming from a different perspective, isn't it? In a work situation, you've got that focus of work or whatever, and in the home situation, a lot more of the individual personalities come out, and I think from both sides, it's a long-term relationship as well. So people are probably jockeying for, this sounds a bit trite or whatever, but jockeying for position. So, in long-term relationships, people are trying to work out what their own role is in that group of people. So, so there's a lot of sort of touring and throwing that comes into the communication process in that regard. Yeah.
So very more interpersonal communication in the home with your partner and children?
Yeah.
Is it the same? Is it the same? What a question. The communication you have with your partner, has it changed over the years from when you first met her to how you are today? Because to stay in a relationship as long as you have and stay, you're still in love with her. I can see that. Okay, and that's beautiful to see. Has the communication always been the same with her? Has it changed or has it?
Well, it's like anything, it goes through phases. So when you start off, it's all very exciting, isn't it? So when I was younger, I was still growing a fair bit from a maturity point of view as well. So, and I wasn't a very good communicator. There's a photo of me in the kindergarten looking like the most forlorn person in the kindy or whatever. So I feel like I've come from a very difficult situation from a communication and interaction with others. But the exciting bit is you learn from all those experiences and you learn how to communicate more effectively. So that's what I've done.
Okay, so earlier on in life it wasn't quite so easy, but you sort of learned along the way.
Yeah, it was never sort of difficult. So no. when you first meet somebody and you're interacting, it's sort of novel and exciting and all that sort of thing, and there's lots of things you don't know about the other person, so you're communicating in that way. So you're exploring, doing a lot of different things together. So that's all new. So it's exciting. So and then when you have children, there's a lot more life and death type situations involved in it. So my wife had a difficult first pregnancy or whatever. So there's all those dramas or whatever. And when our first child was born, she was supposed to have brain damage or whatever. Not that it ever was that case, but we've been given incorrect information or whatever. So when you're sort of communicating with somebody and you're talking about whether your own child's going to have brain damage or not, and how you're going to cope with it, well, they're very difficult things to discuss or whatever.
Okay, I want to pull up on this point here because the medical staff, as you just said, have given you incorrect information. So when you first received that information, that is very possible your firstborn child is going to have some sort of brain damage or brain injury. How did all of that make you feel?
Yeah, it obviously affected us greatly or whatever. So, but partly you've got to have a sense of where things are going yourself. So I always had a sense that I wasn't being told the correct thing or whatever. So my wife and I have a blood incompatibility, and as far as our children are concerned, so that's what caused the problems or whatever. And my daughter had an extreme sort of startle response when she was younger, so she'd sort of kick her legs around, and this is what made the medical staff think that she had something wrong with her or whatever. But it was obviously advice that wasn't founded on any substantial information or whatever. So, and things evolved as well. So back then, that was more serious than it would be today, for instance, the condition. So,
So when you found out that she didn't have all this brain injury or brain damage or anything, it must have been a big relief.
Yeah, we didn't really ever find out that that wasn't the case. It was just, we just convinced ourselves it wasn't, you know, as a parent, you just, without further information and further collaboration that it is definitely a problem, you just assume the best sort of thing, and you just ignore it or whatever, and then as time goes by, it becomes clear that that isn't the situation.
So just even the communication from the medical staff is pretty important as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes when they deliver information, you know, that can have either a devastating effect on the people receiving the information, or it can have a really positive effect on them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, my youngest daughter, as I mentioned, has just graduated in nursing, so there's a whole lot of skills that they need in communicating, and she's got an interesting mixture of being, she's quite compassionate, but she's also quite decisive and sort of hardline in some ways. So it's a good combination as a nurse, because they need to make decisions quickly and effectively. But she's also quite compassionate and aware that she needs to communicate, and you're in a hierarchy with doctors who don't always communicate to nurses as effectively as what they should either. So they package all that up and then reflect that back. So you either pass on the same lack of information, or you say, I'm going to break the chain and I'm going to actually insert information in the dialogue here, so that the same model isn't duplicated. So she luckily decided that she wants to insert information in the chain.
That's good. That's actually really good. Okay, so over time, even your own ability to communicate has changed as well, and it's actually improved a lot, and you become more effective in your communication, and you realise that different situations require different skills.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, I think it's just a matter of being exposed to different things. So as I said, I'm quite often quite grateful for all the different experiences that I've had, because each one of them adds to your your repertoire, shall we say, and you realise it's like a big mosaic on the wall and all these interconnecting bits, and you can add some more bits to your wall as to how to communicate effectively. So it's exciting. So if I had any one message to pass on to others in relation to communication is, don't beat yourself up. If you feel that you haven't communicated effectively in a certain circumstance, just review what you've done and just say, well, how can I do it better, and how can I learn from the experience? And none of us are perfect, so we're all just going to evolve over time. Hopefully be a more effective communicator. You see some older people and you wonder whether the process does actually continue. But anyway, we won't go into that.
Actually, that's a good point. Do you feel that the communication has broken along the line somewhere, or do you think that all of the communication skills are being passed down through generation to generation as
Yeah, well, I actually have an answer to that, but I won't answer it on the tape, not because I'm not going to share it, but because it has a spiritual context to it or whatever.
Okay.
So I actually think we are evolving to have a more significant group consciousness, and that it's interesting as an IT person, you can see the initial the internet come to be and to be used, and that sort of has increased our communication skills. So we can now get information more readily than we ever could, and it's all and it's getting more and more packaged, and like Wikipedia, and you think of Wikipedia as opposed to the Britannica encyclopedia. Well, they're both espousing to do the same thing, but one's a lot more effective than the other. The Wikipedia is more dynamic. It's more interactive with a wider audience in obtaining its content, etc. So, it's chalk and cheese as far as I'm concerned, or whatever. And it gives a great, there's so many different platforms these days for people getting their message out there. So we've got Facebook and all those, YouTube and wherever. So I think it is increasing our communication quite significantly. And, I've been thinking about this a bit lately, that it's interesting when you think about your children and how they communicate as opposed to how you would have communicated at that age. And of course we can't perceive exactly how we were communicating at that age because time sort of manipulates our memories and whatever. But I can see that they're a lot more effective at communicating than what I was, or possibly even the wife was. And I think it's all the opportunities that they have, and all they've been exposed to texting and the chats and chat rooms and all that sort of thing, where that was never part of my upbringing or whatever. So they're more. It's like they say in anything in life, if you want to be effective at it, you've got to use it over and over and repeat and repeat and repeat. So obviously when you're texting and chatting and whatever, is you are communicating and you're getting better and better at it. You just got to watch that you don't just become good at that vertical slice, so that you then broaden the skills away from those things. I think people can become isolated if they keep just doing the one thing. So if they just chat, they're a chat room expert or whatever. Well, you can think of the people in back rooms that are good at chat rooms, but they're not good at in a normal social situation or whatever. So you can't just go in a vertical slice or whatever. So you've got to broaden yourself out.
Here's a question for you. Do you think that all of our internet technology that we have today, do you think it has actually made our communication better or worsened our communication between each other? So all our Facebooks and our mobile phone texting and our emails and our Skype phones and...
Yeah, no, I think it's all good, basically. Yeah. So the more tools we have and the more opportunities we have to communicate, the better it will be. And like I've been discussing for the last 15 minutes or so, it's the different experiences that I've had and how you can take those different experiences and meld them together to become more effective at communicating. So I don't rate myself as a communicator. I don't even think about it as such. But I've been effective at organising different people and getting the result that is appropriate. So I guess on that measure, I'm an effective communicator. You always think you can do better or whatever. So.
Here's another question for you. The communication skills, is it something that we're born with, or are they something that we learn along the way?
No, we learn them along the way, yes.
So where would we learn them from?
Well, we learn them apparently in the womb. So, or we start to learn them in the womb. So apparently, if a father speaks to their child, through the mother's stomach or whatever, the child will recognise the voice when they're born. So we're communicating from a very early age.
So a lot of it is literally picked up from the people that we live with and our environment that we live in and things, and then it's just a lot of it then is just refining the skills through courses and things like that.
Yeah. I do think there's basic differences though between that. have you got to get it onto a controversial subject, and why not?
Absolutely. Come on. All right.
But women have much better communication skills than men in general. So, and men are very direct in how they communicate, whereas women sort of seem to approach it more from it's very difficult to generalise, but from a social context and as a group type context. So I mean, you can imagine it from the hunter-gatherer type approach that the men's out there, men are out there solitary and hunting the game or whatever, and the women are back in the cave in a group or whatever. And I think that has been built into the human psyche or whatever. So I think it lives on the way we communicate. I've got a lot of respect for the way women communicate, because a lot of it is less stressed, or I perceive it as being less stressed than in a male sort of environment. So they can bring a calm to the environment that isn't otherwise there. So I think calmness is a major factor in effective communication, because of it. If you're going in to give a presentation and you're all stressed out about giving that presentation, it won't be effective as a communication process. But if you can do it in a more calm calm manner, you'll get your message across much more effectively. So I think from the feminine side, there's a this calmness type thing comes into it.
It's easier and more relaxed for people to just be themselves.
Yeah, it was interesting that Suncorp had in the programming area, it was one area where males and females could be equal. They were paid the same, and they were as effective, at the job. There wasn't any noticeable difference. And Suncorp actually had an active process of employing women graduates. You can think of it cynically, because they were trying to get the numbers up overall of women graduates or whatever, and there's probably some truth to that. But yeah, from an operating a team type perspective, women gave a good dynamic to a team or whatever. So and I used to have about 50-50, and it worked out quite well. So, and the style of things that they did would be different as well. So some tasks would be better for, this is going to sound sexist or whatever, and it's not, but things would be better done by a female programmer than a male programmer. So, and it's just the nature of how they approached it or whatever, and what they needed the information that they needed to obtain to get the job done. So sometimes it was better for a lady to do it than for a man. And the same in presentations. Sometimes it was better to get a lady to do the presentation than a man. It was interesting. I headed up a couple of teams that were doing new areas, so this was all old hat now, but when PCs came to the corporation, it was a totally new thing, as you can imagine. They'd never been seen in the workplace before, and they were being introduced. So I headed up the section that, one of the sections I managed was doing that for us. And we had a lady that was responsible for, introducing them to the corporation. And she was just so caring and so, she was related very well to what the individual people were doing, and she could communicate so effectively about what their actual workplace needs were, that she was the ideal choice to do the thing. Now, I'm not sure that a male could have actually done that job so effectively. And it's not a sexist thing at all. It's not somebody in a short skirt presenting something. It's just the way that they'd approach the job and interact with those that they were interacting with that meant that they were the better choice for the job. So.
I want to touch on this point because at the end of the day, I don't feel, I don't think it was a sexist thing that we brought up. I think it's more one person is just more suited. They have a different skill. They have a different ability.
That's right.
And that particular ability or skill just happened to get the results that someone else just couldn't get. And they just happen to be female, or they just happen to be male.
Yeah.
And I think that's very prominent in most industries. There are different people with different attributes, different skills, different abilities, and they can get the job done better than someone else.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with communication as well. There are different people with different communication skills that can just go in and get the job done better than someone else. Sometimes, yeah.
Oh, we all know the different characteristics of team dynamics and whatever. And you need different sort of personality styles to do different things. But, I think there is something about the sex of the person doing it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And as I said, it's not actually sexist to say that because if I didn't say it, it would be sexist because I'm recognising that there's an appropriate skill set to do a job or whatever, and an appropriate dynamic to get the job done as well. So.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you, if you actually had a message for the world about communication, what would it be?
I touched on it before.
Yes, I know you touched on it before, so let's bring all of that back and expand on it now. So.
Yeah, well, overall, I think communication is extremely important, and a lot of the problems of the world wouldn't exist if we could just communicate a little bit more effectively. It's starting from a position of equality, and so a lot of times the communication doesn't start from a position of equality. There's all sorts of inequalities that come in, whether it's rank or we mentioned gender before. There's a whole lot of different things that can come into it. But for effective communication, it's got to be a one-on-one, a moment in time, shall we say, that all the history there is gone, and we're just communicating now about a specific issue, and some things will be relevant for that conversation in terms of previous information, but not in a way that's going to destroy the communication process or whatever. So not using things that will build up barriers or whatever.
So being selective in the actual communication that you use with another person and being mindful of it.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. There's a lot of intellectual ways to approach communication, which are fine. So you've got your neuro-linguistic programming and all that sort of thing. So all those are helpful to a degree. So I think it's incumbent upon us all to learn these other things, be aware to some degree of these sort of tools and utilise them in our communications. But in the end, it's got to be as natural as possible. So I can remember the stage of when body language as a topic swept through the business communication, the business community, and it was all so false because people were concentrating too much on how they were sitting and whether their left leg was over their right leg or vice versa, and the communication just went right, the effectiveness of the communication went right out of the window. So it's got to be natural from a natural position.
It's got to be authentic.
That's right.
And very true to yourself and true to who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's even on things like Facebook. The effective communicators on Facebook are the ones that keep giving something of themselves in the communication. So they're bringing out little elements all the time or whatever. Not in a planned way or whatever. It just happens naturally. But they're the ones that are more effective as a communicator. But yeah, I think I applaud your theory because it actually is focusing on the communication process itself and how important it is. So I think a lot of things in the world can be solved by some effective communication and breaking down the barriers that are there, because we all make these assumptions that quite often aren't correct. And we need to, if we're communicating over a period of time, we'll find out that those assumptions aren't correct. So ideally, we'd find that out before we start communicating, but that's not the way of the world, is it? But even so, if we keep communicating, we'll eventually learn what's important to the other person and how to interact with them effectively.
And just being careful not to make assumptions as to what you think is happening or what you think is being said, but really clarify and make sure you truly understand what the other person is trying to say.
Yeah,
yeah.
Indeed.
I want to ask you one last question. With communication itself, what would be the most important aspect of communication? What would be the most important skill?
Why I think I'm successful, we'll change it around a bit.
Yeah.
Why I think I'm successful is I'm a good listener, and I'm a good observer of life. Or whatever. So it's interesting that some of my spiritual journey is about, it's a practical spirituality of saying, why do people react in a certain way and do certain things, and having an understanding of that. So then when you go and communicate with them, you're not going to go into an area that's not going to be of value from a communication point of view. So you've got a respect for the person, that you've got a background for the communication. So I think it's important to do your homework. You know, it depends on the situation. If you're buying a packet of fish and chips or something, it's still important to have effective communication, but obviously you don't need to do a whole lot of research to go and do that. But typically if you're talking in business terms or whatever, it's appropriate to do your homework. So find out as much as you can about that person and where they're coming from, and if you don't know that, to try and ask open questions as to discover what those issues are.
And listening, that's what you were touching on before, listening.
Active listening.
Active listening, very, very important, and not making those assumptions.
That's right. I think it's got to be natural, because what happens, from my own personal experience, is that, you know, if we're trying to be too mechanistic about what we're doing and communicating, we're going to be thinking about that and not about what the other person is saying, and the communication is not effective. So I think it's always funny when people are doing courses on communication and you give them this process to follow, which is probably still appropriate, but it's interesting to see how people execute it, because they're paying more attention to following the steps than actually using it to communicate effectively. It's a bit,
so it doesn't come across as natural or as normal.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think that's the major thing, is to be as natural as possible. So active listening, being as natural as possible, doing your homework, being clear. You know, as a financial planner, a lot of things that you're doing involve goal setting and things like that. So being clear about what the purpose of the communication is. I mean, it sounds trite when you say it, but it's the more effective, you know, your communication will be more effective if you've got a clear idea of what the outcome of the communication is going to be. You don't have to dwell entirely on getting point 1, 2, and 3 or whatever out, or whatever. But it's a lot of conversations can waffle a lot, and that, I think that just makes the thing boring.
I think it can too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Clint, I'd like to say thank you very much for opening your door today and allowing me to come into your office here at Accuity and allowing me to interview you.
Pleasure.
You touched on quite a number of very important points today. You know, active listening is very important, not making assumptions, making sure you're clear and open questions, making sure you understand what the other person is saying. And even even when you were saying, some people when they go to a course and they learn skills, they're doing that step by step by step. It's not about using the steps all the time. It's about just flowing and allowing all the conversation.
Being in the zone.
Being in the zone. And just being in that, being very present. Being very present with themselves and with the other people.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure being able to interview you today, and I've loved how you brought all these different, very important aspects to the forefront so that everyone else can see them.
Thank you. No, as I said, I'm grateful that I've had all those experiences and can pass them on to other people to be, hopefully they may be of some use.
Great wisdom is being shared today. Great knowledge is being shared.
Well, that's for other people to judge or whatever, but I just try and make people's pathway as easy as possible so they can help somebody. That's good.
That's good. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
So, this has been Stacey Harish from Training for Transformation, and this is Street Interview number 7. Thank you, Clint McKauge from Accuity. And till the next time we take to the street, have the most outstanding day, guys. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
I'm biting Lil too.